I never believed in monsters until one decided to believe in me. My name is Elena Vasquez, and I'm probably the only paranormal investigator who got into this field because of a Christmas present. When I was 8, my grandmother gave me a book called Real Ghost Stories for Brave Children. Most kids would have had nightmares. I stayed up all night reading it 3 times in a row, absolutely fascinated by the idea that there might be more to our world than what we could see. 23 years later, that fascination had turned into a doctorate in folklore studies and a reputation as one of the country's leading experts on supernatural phenomena. Had being the key word there, because 3 weeks ago, everything went to hell. I was standing in the parking lot of Crimson Creek Elementary School at almost 3 in the morning, watching my breath fog up in the freezing December air. The school had been closed for 2 years after what the news called the incident. 14 children had disappeared during their Christmas pageant. Not died, not got lost, disappeared. 1 minute they were on stage singing Silent Night. The next minute they were gone. Security cameras showed nothing. Parents sitting in the audience saw nothing. The kids just vanished into thin air. But I could hear them now. Their voices drifted through the broken windows of the school, singing that same Christmas carol over and over. The melody was wrong, though, twisted somehow, like someone had taken the notes and bent them into shapes they were never meant to make. It made my skin crawl and my teeth ache. But I kept listening, because this was exactly what I'd been looking for. My equipment was going crazy. The EMF detector looked like it was having a seizure, the needle jumping back and forth so fast it was just a blur. The temperature gun showed cold spots moving through the building like living things, and my digital recorder was picking up frequencies that shouldn't exist. I'd been hunting things like this for years, and I'd never seen readings this strong. I should probably mention why I was out here alone instead of leading a proper research team. That would be thanks to Professor Vincent Sterling, the man who destroyed my career with a smile on his face and a knife in my back. Sterling had been my mentor, the person I trusted most in the academic world. We'd worked together for 5 years, documenting cases of what we called festive entities, supernatural beings that seemed to feed off holiday emotions and traditions. Our research was groundbreaking, revolutionary even. We were going to change how the scientific community understood paranormal phenomena. Then Sterling decided he didn't want to share the credit. He took our research, published it under his name alone, and when I confronted him, he had me blacklisted from every major university in the country. According to him, I was mentally unstable and had delusions of grandeur. The academic world believed him because he was Professor Vincent Sterling, distinguished scholar and author, and I was just his graduate student who'd obviously lost her mind. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I'd been working alone, determined to prove that our research was real and that Sterling was a lying piece of garbage who'd stolen 5 years of my life. The singing from inside the school got louder, more insistent. I grabbed my camera bag and walked toward the main entrance. Someone had chained the door shut, but there was a basement window that had been broken out. I'd found it during my initial reconnaissance 2 days ago. The smell hit me as soon as I dropped into the basement. It was wrong on every level, like gingerbread cookies left to rot, mixed with something metallic and sharp that made my eyes water. The basement was used for storage, full of boxes of Christmas decorations that the school had never gotten to put away after the incident. Cardboard angels with water-stained faces stared at me from every corner, and tinsel caught my flashlight beam like spider webs. I made my way upstairs to the main hallway. The school felt bigger on the inside than it should have, like the walls had stretched when no one was looking. My footsteps echoed strangely, coming back to me as whispers that almost sounded like words. The children's singing was coming from the gymnasium at the end of the hall where they'd held the Christmas pageant. My research partner, Marcus Webb, would have loved this place. Marcus was the only person who'd stuck by me after Sterling's betrayal. He was a tech specialist, brilliant with audio and visual equipment, and he had this amazing ability to stay calm no matter how terrifying things got. We'd been planning to investigate this school together, but Marcus had gone missing 4 days ago. His apartment was empty, his phone went straight to voicemail, and his car was found abandoned at the edge of town. I had a sick feeling I was going to find out what happened to him tonight. The gymnasium doors were standing open, which was weird because I was sure they'd been closed when I'd scouted the place earlier. Inside, the room was set up exactly like it had been on the night of the pageant. Folding chairs arranged in neat rows, a small stage at the front, decorated with paper snowflakes and construction paper Christmas trees. And on the stage, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure that made my blood freeze in my veins. It was Santa Claus, but wrong in every possible way. The red suit was there and the white beard, but they looked old and dirty, like they'd been buried underground for years and then dug up. The figure was too tall, too thin, like someone had taken a normal person and stretched them on a rack. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could see its eyes glowing with a sick greenish light. "Ho, ho, ho," it said, and the sound made me want to vomit. It wasn't jolly or cheerful. It was hungry and predatory, like a wolf trying to imitate human laughter. "Elena Vasquez, I've been waiting for you." The fact that it knew my name should have terrified me. It did terrify me, but it also filled me with a strange sense of validation. This thing, whatever it was real. My research was real. Sterling could go to hell. I'd been right all along. The creature stepped forward into the light, and I got my first clear look at its face. I immediately wished I hadn't. Its skin was waxy and pale, like a candle that had been left too close to a fire. Its smile was too wide, stretching from ear to ear, and its teeth were sharp and yellow, and way too numerous for any normal mouth. "Have you been naughty or nice, little doctor?" it asked, tilting its head at an angle that made my neck hurt to look at. I raised my camera with shaking hands. This was it. This was my proof. Whatever happened next, I was going to document every second of it. The creature's glowing eyes fixed on my camera, and its impossible smile got even wider. "Oh, good," it said. I do so love an audience. I pressed the record button on my camera, my finger trembling so badly I almost missed it. The creature watched me with those horrible glowing eyes, its head still tilted at that nauseating angle. Up close, I could see that its beard wasn't really white at all. It was stained with something dark and crusty that flaked off when it moved. "What are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice cracking like I was 13 again. It laughed, and the sound made every window in the gymnasium rattle. "I am the spirit of Christmas, little doctor. The real spirit. Not the sanitized version your kind has created. I am what Christmas was before you made it safe and pretty and wrapped it up in shiny paper." The thing started walking toward me, its movements jerky and wrong, like a marionette being controlled by a drunk puppeteer. Each step it took left wet, dark prints on the gymnasium floor, and the temperature in the room dropped so fast that my breath started coming out in thick clouds. "I know why you're here," it continued, its voice a horrible parody of jolly old Santa. "You want to prove that creatures like me exist. You want to show that arrogant professor who stole your work that you were right all along. Vincent Sterling, isn't it?" Hearing Sterling's name come out of that nightmare's mouth made my stomach lurch. How could it possibly know about that? But then I remembered my research. These entities fed off strong emotions, particularly negative ones. My anger and humiliation over Sterling's betrayal had been eating me alive for weeks. Maybe it could sense that. "How do you know about Sterling?" I asked, backing toward the gymnasium doors. My camera was still recording, capturing every word, every horrible detail. "Oh, I know all about Professor Sterling," the creature said, its grin widening even further. "In fact, I have something that belongs to you, something he tried to take away." It reached into its filthy red coat and pulled out a manila folder. Even from 20 FT away, I could see my handwriting on the label. "Festive Entities Research. E. Vasquez and V. Sterling, my original research notes, the ones Sterling claimed he destroyed after having me thrown out of the university. My notes, I breathed. Your life's work, the creature corrected. 5 years of careful documentation, meticulous research, brilliant theories about beings like me. Sterling thought he could steal it all, publish it under his name, and no one would ever know the truth. I felt a surge of anger so intense, it made my vision blur at the edges. Those notes represented everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, relationships, sleep, my health, my sanity. I'd given up everything to document the existence of supernatural entities, and Sterling had taken it all away with a smile and a handshake. He destroyed my career, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. He made everyone think I was crazy. Yes, he did, the creature agreed, taking another step closer. But I can give you something much better than career vindication, Elena. I can give you revenge. The word hung in the air between us like a poisonous cloud. Revenge. It was something I'd fantasized about during the long, sleepless nights after Sterling's betrayal. I'd imagined confronting him in front of his colleagues, proving that our research was real, watching his reputation crumble the way mine had. But this thing wasn't talking about professional revenge. The hunger in its glowing eyes told me it had something much darker in mind. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Instead of responding, the creature gestured toward the stage behind it. For the first time, I noticed there was something else up there besides the Christmas decorations. In the shadows at the back of the stage, I could see shapes, small shapes, child-sized shapes. My heart started hammering against my ribs. The missing children. Where are they? Safe, the creature said, and its voice had taken on an almost parental tone that made my skin crawl. "Auntie, they're having the most wonderful Christmas pageant you could imagine. It's been going on for 2 years now, and they're still singing. They love it so much they never want to stop." I raised my camera higher, zooming in on the stage. The shapes in the shadows were moving slightly, swaying back and forth like they were singing. But there was something wrong with their movements, something mechanical and lifeless. "Let them go," I said, though I wasn't sure this thing was capable of listening to reason. "Oh, but they don't want to go," the creature replied. "They're so happy here performing their eternal Christmas pageant, and soon they'll have new friends to sing with." It was then that I heard the footsteps behind me. Slow, dragging footsteps coming from the hallway I just walked through. I spun around, my camera still rolling, and saw another figure silhouetted in the gymnasium doorway. This one was human, or had been once. It was wearing a suit that I recognized, a gray pinstripe that I'd seen in faculty meetings for years. The figure stepped into the light, and I nearly dropped my camera. It was Professor Vincent Sterling. But something was horribly wrong with him. His face was pale and waxy like the creature's, and his eyes had that same sickly green glow. His mouth was stretched into a rectus grin that was trying to be pleasant, but looked more like a death mask. "Hello, Elena," he said, in a voice that was almost his own, but not quite. It was like listening to a recording of Sterling played through broken speakers. "I've been looking everywhere for you." The creature behind me let out another one of those bone-rattling laughs. "Professor Sterling has been my guest for the past 4 days. He came looking for you, actually. Seems he was feeling rather guilty about what he did to your career." I looked back and forth between Sterling and the creature, trying to process what I was seeing. Sterling had come looking for me. The man who destroyed my life had grown a conscience. He wanted to apologize, the creature continued, to make amends, to offer you your job back, if you can believe that touching, really. Sterling's glowing eyes fixed on mine, and for just a moment, I saw something behind that horrible grin. Fear, pain, whatever this thing had done to him, some part of the real Sterling was still trapped inside, aware of what was happening. "Please." Sterling's voice came out in a strangled whisper. Help me! The creature clapped its hands together with delight. Oh, this is perfect. Elena, my dear, you have a choice to make. You can take your revenge on Professor Sterling. He's right here, helpless at your mercy. Or you can try to save him and join him and the children in my wonderful eternal Christmas celebration. I stood there in that freezing gymnasium, camera in my hands, faced with the choice I'd been unconsciously preparing for since the moment Sterling destroyed my career. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to run, to get out of there while I still could. But the hurt, angry part of me, the part that had been festering for weeks, wanted to see Sterling suffer the way he'd made me suffer. The creature was watching me with those predatory eyes, waiting for my decision. And somewhere in the shadows of the stage, the missing children continued their endless, twisted Christmas pageant. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, ready to snap. Sterling's corrupted form swayed slightly, those horrible glowing eyes never leaving my face, while the creature in the Santa suit waited with the patience of something that had all the time in the world. My camera kept recording, the tiny red light blinking steadily in the darkness. "Tick, Elena," the creature said, its voice dripping with false cheer. "Christmas doesn't last forever, you know." "Well, not for everyone." I looked at Sterling again, really looked at him. The man who had destroyed my career, stolen my research, turned me into a laughingstock in the academic world. Part of me wanted to see him suffer, wanted to watch whatever this thing had planned for him play out. But the larger part of me, the part that had become a researcher because I wanted to help people understand the unknown, couldn't stomach the idea of leaving anyone in this monster's hands. "What did you do to him?" I asked, stalling for time while I tried to figure out a way out of this nightmare. "The same thing I'm going to do to you if you make the wrong choice," the creature replied. I showed him the true spirit of Christmas, the ancient spirit that your modern world has forgotten. Christmas was never about peace and goodwill, Elena. It was about the darkness of winter, about the things that hunted in the long, cold nights. I am what Christmas really is. Hunger dressed up in pretty colors. As if to emphasize its point, the creature opened its mouth wider, and I could see rows upon rows of sharp teeth disappearing into its throat, like a shark's maw. The stench of rotting gingerbread and old blood wafted across the gymnasium. "The children understand," it continued. "They've learned to sing my songs to celebrate the real Christmas. They're so much happier now than they ever were with your sanitized version of the holiday." I forced myself to look at the stage again, focusing my camera on the small figures in the shadows. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out more details, and what I saw made bile rise in my throat. The children were still there, all 14 of them, but they weren't really children anymore. Their skin had the same waxy pale quality as Staring's, and their eyes glowed with that sickly green light. They were swaying back and forth, their mouths moving in perfect synchronization, but no sound was coming out. "Now, Ing," I whispered, horror creeping into my voice. "They literally can't stop." "Why would they want to?" the creature asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. "They're performing the greatest Christmas pageant ever conceived. They get to be part of something eternal, something beautiful. Just like Professor Sterling will be once his transformation is complete." Sterling let out a low moan, and I saw his body shudder. Whatever process this thing had started, it wasn't finished yet. There might still be time to save him, to save all of them. "What do you want from me?" I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. "I want you to choose," the creature said, clasping its hands together like an excited child. "You can have your revenge on Professor Sterling. I'll let you walk away with your research and your proof that creatures like me exist. You'll be vindicated, famous, everything you ever wanted. All you have to do is let me finish what I started with him." The offer was tempting. God help me. It was actually tempting. I could have everything I'd lost, everything Sterling had taken from me. My career, my reputation, my life's work. It could all be mine again. All I had to do was walk away and let this monster have one more victim. Or, I asked, because there had to be an alternative. There always was with these things. The creature's grin widened impossibly. Or you can try to save them all, Professor Sterling. The children, even that colleague of yours who came sniffing around here a few days ago. Marcus, wasn't it? My blood turned to ice. Marcus is here, Marcus Webb. Oh, yes. He's been such a delightful addition to my Christmas choir. Would you like to see him? The creature gestured toward the stage, and one of the figures in the shadows stepped forward. It was Marcus, or what had been Marcus. He had the same pale, waxy skin as the others, the same glowing eyes, the same mechanical movements. But unlike Sterling, Marcus's transformation seemed complete. There was no recognition in his eyes, no trace of the brilliant, funny man I'd worked with for 2 years. Marcus, I whispered, and he turned his head toward the sound of my voice. For just a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in those green eyes, some spark of the person he used to be. Then it was gone, replaced by that same empty, eternal smile. He was so eager to document everything, the creature said conversationally. Just like you. He had all sorts of interesting equipment, cameras and sensors and recording devices. Unfortunately for him, some things are too dangerous to study up close. I felt tears starting to burn behind my eyes. Marcus had come here looking for answers, just like me. He'd probably been trying to help me to prove that my research was real. And now he was trapped in this thing's twisted version of Christmas forever. Here's the deal, Elena, the creature continued. You can try to save them, all of them. But if you fail, if you can't figure out how to break my hold over them, then you join them. You become part of my eternal Christmas pageant, singing my songs until the end of time. Or you can take what you came for and walk away. Your choice. I looked around the gymnasium at Sterling swaying in the doorway, at Marcus and the children on the stage, at this horrible parody of Santa Claus offering me everything I'd ever wanted at a price I wasn't sure I could pay. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, something she'd told me when she gave me that book of ghost stories all those years ago. The difference between a hero and a coward isn't whether you're scared, Mika. It's what you do when you're scared that counts. I was terrified, more scared than I'd ever been in my life. But I couldn't walk away. Not from Marcus, not from those children, not even from Sterling. Whatever he'd done to me, he didn't deserve this. There's a third option, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I destroy you. The creature's laughter filled the gymnasium like breaking glass. Oh, my dear Elena, you can't destroy Christmas. Christmas is eternal. Christmas is hunger and darkness, and the cold that creeps into your bones on winter nights. I am older than your civilization, older than your gods. What makes you think you can destroy me? I raised my camera, making sure it was still recording. Because I know what you really are. And once I figure out how to kill you, I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too. The creature's smile finally faltered just for a moment. And in that moment, I saw something that gave me hope. I saw fear. The moment of fear in the creature's eyes lasted maybe half a second. But it was enough. Whatever this thing was, however ancient and powerful it claimed to be, it wasn't invincible. It could be hurt, which meant it could be killed. You want to know what I really am? The creature snarled, its voice losing that horrible jolly quality and becoming something much more primal and dangerous. I am the hunger. I am what waits in the darkness between Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. I am the price of your precious holiday joy. The temperature in the gymnasium plummeted even further. My breath came out in thick clouds now, and ice began forming on the windows. The creature's form started to change, growing taller and more skeletal, its red suit stretching and tearing to accommodate its expanding frame. Every Christmas wish, every moment of holiday happiness, every child's laugh on Christmas morning, it all comes with a cost. It continued, its voice now a grinding whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Someone has to pay the price for all that joy. Someone has to feed the darkness so the light can shine. I backed toward the stage, my camera still recording, my mind racing. This thing fed on holiday emotions. That much I'd figured out from my research. But it wasn't just feeding on them. It was maintaining some kind of cosmic balance. For every moment of Christmas joy in the world, it extracted an equal amount of suffering. The children, I said, understanding starting to dawn. You didn't just take them randomly. You took them during the pageant because that's when their Christmas joy was at its peak. The creature's twisted grin returned. Very good. Dr. Vasquez, yes. The more joy they were experiencing, the more delicious their transformation became. Pure Christmas spirit, corrupted, and converted into something useful. I reached the edge of the stage and turned to face Marcus. Up close, his transformation was even more horrifying. His skin wasn't just pale. It was translucent, like wax paper, and I could see dark veins underneath pulsing with that sickly green light. His Christmas pageant costume, a simple shepherd's robe, was stained with something that looked disturbingly like eggnog. "Marcus," I whispered, "can you hear me?" His head turned toward me with jerky, puppet-like movements. When he spoke, his voice was a hollow echo of what it used to be. "Elena, is that really you?" My heart jumped. He was still in there, somewhere beneath whatever this thing had done to him. "Yes, it's me. I'm going to get you out of here." "You can't," Marcus said, and there was infinite sadness in his voice. "It's too late for me, for all of us. The song never ends, Elena. It just goes on and on and on." Behind me, the creature laughed. He's right. You know, once the transformation is complete, there's no going back. They become part of me, part of the eternal Christmas celebration. Marcus has been singing my songs for 4 days now. Soon, Professor Sterling will join him, and then it trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Then it would be my turn. I looked past Marcus at the 14 children standing in the shadows. They were all staring at me now with those glowing green eyes, their mouths moving in silent song. Some of them couldn't have been more than 6 years old when they disappeared. Years they'd been trapped here, singing this monster's twisted Christmas carols. There has to be a way to reverse it, I said, more to myself than to anyone else. Everything has rules, even supernatural entities. There's always a way to break the connection. "Elena," Marcus said, taking a step toward me. His movement was still wrong, still mechanical, but there was urgency in his voice. "The equipment in my bag. I brought something." He gestured weakly toward the far corner of the stage where I could just make out a familiar camera bag in the shadows. Marcus's equipment bag. The one he never went anywhere without. What could he have brought that might help? The creature seemed to realize what was happening because its laughter cut off abruptly. "No," it growled. "You won't interfere with my collection." It started moving toward the stage, its transformed body now so tall that its head nearly touched the ceiling. Those rows of shark teeth were fully visible now, gleaming in the dim light like polished bone. But as it moved, I noticed something important. It wasn't moving as fast as it should have been. Something was slowing it down. I sprinted toward Marcus's bag, dodging between the transformed children. They tried to grab me as I passed, their movements still sluggish and mechanical, but I managed to slip through their grasping fingers. Whatever the creature had done to them, they weren't fully under its control yet. I reached the bag and tore it open. Inside was Marcus's usual collection of recording equipment, but there was something else, too. Something I recognized from our research, but had never actually seen in person. It was a piece of cold iron shaped into a crude cross and wrapped with silver wire. Attached to it was a note in Marcus's handwriting. "Elena, if you're reading this, it means I was right about the entity's weakness. Iron disrupts their connection to this realm. Silver burns them, and the cross shape focuses the effect. Use it on the source of their power, whatever they use to anchor themselves here." I looked around frantically, trying to figure out what the creature's anchor could be. The children were victims, not the source of its power. Sterling was still transforming, still partially human. But then I saw it. On the wall behind the stage, partially hidden by construction paper decorations, was an old Christmas tree. Not a real tree. This one was made of metal and wire, painted green, and decorated with what looked like human teeth instead of ornaments. The tree was pulsing with that same sickly green light, and I could see thin threads of energy connecting it to each of the transformed victims. "The tree," I breathed. "It's using the tree as an anchor." The creature let out a roar of rage that shattered every remaining window in the gymnasium. "You will not touch my Christmas tree." It lunged toward me, moving faster now, its massive claws reaching for my throat. But Marcus suddenly stepped between us, his transformed body taking the full force of the creature's attack. The monster's claws rad across his chest, tearing through his robe and the waxy skin beneath. "Now, Elena!" Marcus shouted, his voice stronger than it had been since I'd arrived. "Do it now!" I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the iron cross and ran toward the tree, dodging falling debris from the creature's rampage. Behind me, I could hear Marcus struggling with the monster, buying me the precious seconds I needed. The tree was warm to the touch, like living flesh. As soon as the iron cross made contact with its trunk, the entire gymnasium was filled with a sound like screaming wind. The green light flared brighter, then began to flicker and fade. The creature's roar of pain was inhuman, a sound that made my ears bleed and my vision blur. But I held on to the cross, pressing it harder against the tree, feeling the silver wire burn my palms as it conducted some kind of supernatural energy. All around me, the transformed victims began to convulse. The children fell to their knees, their glowing eyes flickering between green and their natural colors. Sterling stumbled and nearly collapsed in the gymnasium doorway. And Marcus? Marcus looked at me with eyes that were almost human again and smiled. "Thank you," he whispered. The moment Marcus spoke those words, the creature's scream reached a pitch that I didn't think was physically possible. The sound hit me like a physical blow, driving me to my knees, but I kept the iron cross pressed against that horrible tree. The silver wire was burning through my palms now, leaving blisters that sizzled and popped. But I couldn't let go, not when I was so close. The green light pulsing through the tree was getting weaker, more erratic, like a dying heartbeat. The energy threads connecting it to the victims were starting to snap one by one, each break accompanied by a sound like breaking glass. As each thread severed, another person collapsed to the floor, convulsing as whatever hold the creature had on them began to weaken. But the creature wasn't giving up without a fight. It threw Marcus aside like a rag doll and lunged toward me again, its massive form moving with desperate fury. This time, though, it was slower, clumsier. The Iron Cross wasn't just disrupting its connection to the victims. It was disrupting its connection to this realm entirely. "You don't understand what you're doing," it shrieked, its voice now more animal than human. "Without me, there is no balance. Without the darkness, the light means nothing. Christmas will lose all meaning." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," I grunted, pressing the cross harder against the tree. Despite the agony in my burned hands, maybe Christmas doesn't need your kind of balance. The creature's claws rad across my back as it tried to pull me away from the tree, tearing through my jacket and the skin beneath. But I could feel it weakening with each passing second. Its claws weren't as sharp as they had been, its strength not as overwhelming. Around me, the victims were beginning to change back. The children were the first. Their skin was losing that horrible waxy quality, color returning to their cheeks, their eyes flickering between green and brown and blue. They were gasping and choking like they were remembering how to breathe after 2 years of being trapped in suspended animation. Sterling was changing too, his body convulsing as whatever transformation the creature had started reversed itself. The green glow was fading from his eyes, replaced by confusion and terror. But at least they were human emotions again. Elena, Marcus's voice called from somewhere behind me. He sounded more like himself now, though I could hear the pain in his voice from where the creature had thrown him. The tree! Look at the tree! I looked down and saw what he meant. The metal branches were starting to rust and crumble, the paint flaking off in huge chunks. The teeth that had been used as ornaments were turning black and falling to the floor with wet, sickening sounds. Whatever dark magic had been holding this thing together was unraveling fast. But the creature made one last desperate attempt to save itself. Instead of trying to pull me away from the tree, it wrapped its massive arms around both me and the tree together, squeezing with crushing force. I felt my ribs creak under the pressure, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe at all. "If I die," it hissed in my ear, its breath reeking of rotting gingerbread and old blood. "I'm taking you with me. You'll spend eternity as part of my Christmas collection, singing my songs in the darkness between worlds." The world started to go gray at the edges as the creature's grip tightened. I could feel myself starting to slip away, my consciousness fading like the green light in the tree. But then I heard something that gave me strength I didn't know I had left. The children were singing, not the creature's twisted songs, but a real Christmas carol, Silent Night, the same song they'd been performing when they disappeared 2 years ago. Their voices were weak and shaky, but they were human voices, free voices, singing because they chose to, not because some monster was forcing them to. That song gave me the strength to make one final push. I drove the iron cross deeper into the tree's trunk, ignoring the way the silver wire cut into my palms, ignoring the creature's crushing embrace, ignoring everything except the need to break this thing's power once and for all. The tree exploded, not with fire or debris, but with pure light, blinding white light that filled every corner of the gymnasium and drove the creature back with a shriek of absolute agony. I felt its arms release me as it stumbled backward, its form already beginning to dissolve at the edges. "This isn't over," it gasped, its voice now little more than a whisper. "There are others like me, other entities that maintain the balance. You've only delayed the inevitable." "Maybe," I said, getting to my feet despite the pain in my burned hands and slashed back. "But I delayed it long enough to save these people. And now I know how to fight things like you." The creature let out one final defeated laugh. "Do you really think you've won? Look around you, Elena. Look at what your victory has cost." I looked around the gymnasium and my heart sank. The children were free, yes, but they were also traumatized beyond anything I could imagine. 2 years of being trapped in that nightmare had left marks on them that would probably never fully heal. Some of them were catatonic, staring at nothing with empty eyes. Others were sobbing uncontrollably, calling for parents who might not even be alive anymore. Sterling was conscious but barely coherent, muttering to himself in the corner about research and Christmas trees and things that should never be spoken aloud. Marcus was sitting against the wall, his face pale and drawn, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past few minutes. And me? I was standing in the ruins of a gymnasium, holding a piece of iron that had burned the flesh off my palms, bleeding from claw marks across my back, watching 14 children struggle to remember how to be human again. But they were human again. That was what mattered. The creature's form was almost completely gone now, just wisps of shadow and the lingering smell of corrupted Christmas cookies. As the last traces of it faded away, the gymnasium suddenly felt normal again, cold because the windows were broken, not because of supernatural influence, empty because it was abandoned, not because something evil was lurking in the shadows. "Is it over?" Marcus asked weakly. I looked at the pile of rust and rotting metal that had been the creature's anchor tree, then at the children who were slowly helping each other stand up, then at Sterling, who was gradually becoming aware of his surroundings again. "For now," I said, "but we have work to do." I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. These children needed medical attention. Sterling needed psychiatric help, and Marcus needed to get to a hospital. But first, we needed to get everyone out of this place. As I waited for the emergency operator to answer, I thought about what the creature had said. There were others like it out there, other entities maintaining their twisted version of balance. My research was just beginning, but that was a problem for another day. Right now, I had 14 children to get home for Christmas. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new office at the University of Denver, surrounded by boxes of research materials and a stack of job offers from institutions around the world. Funny how quickly things can change when you have video evidence of supernatural entities and 14 rescued children to back up your claims. The footage from my camera had been analyzed by experts, authenticated, and studied by everyone from quantum physicists to theologians. The existence of what I'd started calling parasitic holiday entities was no longer a matter of debate. It was documented scientific fact. Professor Vincent Sterling had been forced to issue a public apology and resign from his position. His reputation was in ruins, and honestly, I wasn't sure I felt as good about that as I'd expected to. I'd visited him in the psychiatric facility where he was recovering. The experience had left him deeply traumatized, but he was getting better. He remembered everything, every moment of being trapped inside his own mind, while the creature controlled his body. He'd begged me to forgive him, tears streaming down his face, babbling about how he'd never understood what real terror felt like until then. I'd forgiven him, not because he deserved it, but because carrying that anger around had nearly cost me everything. The creature had fed on my rage and resentment, used it to manipulate me into that gymnasium. I wasn't going to give another entity that kind of power over me. Marcus was doing better than any of us had expected. His transformation had been the most complete. But, ironically, that meant he remembered less of the experience than Sterling did. He'd taken a position at a research institute in California, studying the psychological effects of supernatural encounters. He called me every few days to check in and share his latest findings. The children were the real success story, though. Kids are remarkably resilient, it turns out. With proper counseling and the support of their families, most of them were recovering well. They still had nightmares sometimes, and a few of them refused to celebrate Christmas anymore. But they were alive and human and home with the people who loved them. I'd attended several of their homecoming celebrations over the past few weeks, watching those families reunite, seeing parents hold children they'd thought were gone forever. It reminded me why I'd gotten into this field in the first place. Not for fame or recognition, but to help people who were facing things they couldn't understand or fight on their own. The knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, expecting it to be another reporter or researcher wanting to interview me about my experience. Instead, it was a young woman I didn't recognize, probably in her early 20s, with short black hair and nervous energy that reminded me of myself at that age. She was carrying a folder thick with papers and photographs. "Dr. Vasquez," she said. "My name is Christina Park. I'm a graduate student at Northwestern, and I need your help." I gestured for her to sit down. "What can I do for you, Christina?" She opened her folder and pulled out a photograph that made my blood run cold. It showed a shopping mall decorated for Easter, with a massive bunny display in the center court. But there was something wrong with the bunny costume. Its eyes glowed with a familiar, sickly light, and its smile was too wide, too full of teeth. "Children have been disappearing from shopping malls across the Midwest," Christina said. "Always around Easter, always during visits with the Easter bunny. The police think it's a human predator, but I've been tracking the pattern, and it's not human. It's something else." I studied the photograph, noting the electromagnetic distortions around the bunny figure, the way shadows seemed to bend toward it unnaturally. Another parasitic holiday entity, just like the creature had warned me. They were out there feeding on seasonal joy, maintaining their twisted version of cosmic balance. "How many children?" I asked. 17 so far across 6 different malls." But Dr. Vasquez, I think I know where it's going to strike next. She pulled out a map with several locations marked in red. There's a pattern to the disappearances, a specific route it's following. Based on my calculations, it should hit the Brookside Mall in Chicago this weekend. I looked at the evidence she'd compiled, impressed, despite myself. Her research was thorough, her methodology sound, her conclusions logical. She reminded me of myself when I'd first started documenting supernatural phenomena, full of determination and academic rigor. "This is good work, Christina," I said. "But why come to me? Why not take this to the authorities?" She laughed bitterly. "Would you have believed this 3 weeks ago? Would anyone? You're the only person in the world who's proven that these things exist and can be stopped." She was right, of course. I'd become something I'd never intended to be, an expert in fighting supernatural predators. The thought should have terrified me. But instead, I felt a strange sense of purpose settling over me like a comfortable jacket. "All right," I said, closing her folder and standing up. "Let's go hunting." As we left my office together, I thought about what the Christmas creature had said about balance, about the price of holiday joy. Maybe it was right. Maybe there would always be things lurking in the shadows, feeding on our celebrations, perverting our traditions into something dark and hungry. But that didn't mean we had to let them win. I had my research, my equipment, and now I had help. Christina wasn't the only one who'd contacted me in the past few weeks. There were others out there, researchers and investigators and ordinary people who'd encountered things they couldn't explain. We were forming a network, sharing information, developing new techniques for identifying and combating parasitic entities. The Christmas creature had been right about one thing. There were others like it out there. But what it hadn't counted on was that there were people like me, too. People who wouldn't walk away when faced with the impossible. Who would risk everything to protect the innocent. As Christina and I walked toward the parking garage, I felt my phone buzz with a text message. It was from Marcus. "Elena, I'm seeing reports of strange activity around Valentine's Day displays in shopping malls across Texas. Heart-shaped chocolates moving on their own. Couples experiencing hallucinations during romantic dinners. Sound familiar?" I showed the message to Christina, who swore under her breath. "Looks like we're going to be busier than I thought," she said. I smiled grimly and started the car. Christmas was over, but the real work was just beginning. Somewhere out there, a parasitic Easter entity was preparing to collect more children for its twisted celebration. After that, it would be Valentine's Day, then Halloween, then Christmas again. But for the first time since this all started, I wasn't facing it alone. "So," Christina said as we pulled out of the parking garage, "what's our first move?" I thought about the 14 children safely home with their families, about Marcus recovering in California, about Sterling getting the help he needed. I thought about all the other families out there who might lose someone to these creatures if we didn't act. "We go shopping," I said. "Time to pay the Easter Bunny a visit."